Morning. Today is, what is today? Today is the end of March. It is Good Friday, so happy Good Friday to those that are celebrating that on this Easter weekend. I have the day off and I have taken some time this morning to head into the woods. I wasn't able to get out last Saturday because the weather was cold and wet and like a chronic all-day rainy day in the early 30s. And aside from the fact it was very reminiscent of the weather conditions when I got lost a couple of years ago and had a little misadventure that day, there was really nothing beneficial about being out in that weather. Cold, wet, and useless, basically. So we're out today, and we're going to take a look around. We are in the local vigilance area. On the 6th of April, we are highly likely going to begin our return to the northern areas and have a look around in there. Hopefully with better luck than last year. Because when I got up there last year, something had inspired the beavers to flood the living crap out of the entire area. And multiple areas I'm talking about. So we'll see how that goes then. That's on the immediate horizon, though, so we will be returning to the north very shortly. For today, we are going to have a bit of a rant and see what else comes up, and we'll take it from there. Let's get moving. Let's see what we find. And it's a windy day, so there may be some element of Widowmaker awareness I need to have, and it's probably going to defeat the purpose of infrasound recording because wind generates a lot of infrasound. So what I'm up against with that today probably is just a lot of infrasonic white noise that is going to be problematic. So unfortunately, the conditions today are not ideal. They're better than last week, but they're not ideal. We'll see what we can find. We'll focus more on tracking and that kind of thing in the muddy areas. But let's get moving and see where we are with that. Thanks. We are back. It is still windy, so I don't know how much effect on the background noise the wind is going to have. It is windy up here more often than it isn't. I looked for a day out of the long weekend it is a long weekend for me, so I may or may not get out tomorrow too. Or conceivably Sunday's not out of the question either. But the outcome for the weather is looking windy all 3 days. It's just this time of year. You see the amount of trees down. And unfortunately, and this does segue into a repeat of a rant I'm about to go into, but it's required due to a continuing trend. But the fact is that these trees did not fall at the hands of Bigfoot or other woo-related nonsense. Listen for a moment. As we get closer to the water, you can see the trees moving in the wind. This is also the idea why the underlying reason why the drone is probably not flying today, because I don't feel like watching it fly off into the distance due to the wind either. C'est la vie. Then we have some updates for things I previously discussed. So first of all, I have in fact graduated my forestry class, so yay for me. I have the credentials now to say that I have at least a fundamental level of forestry related knowledge because I took the course and I passed the course and did fairly decent with a grade in the high 80s, so I know this stuff to a reasonable decent degree, and I've had a couple of opportunities to use it as people are trying to point at shit around the woods and say, hey, Bigfoot did that. Like, no, that's probably your least likelihood. It could have been caused by A, B, C, or D, and these are the forestry-related reasons why. Which I'm sure pisses people off because, science, but that's kind of how that is. And that segues us into the rant because there's a continuing trend where people of the non-scientific mindset relating to Bigfoot and related phenomenon, the woo, call it what it is, and the woo and the grifters, they continue. And that, if this is your shtick and this is what you do, I'm not going to be one to say that the First Amendment doesn't apply to you idiots too. I mean, you can be as dumb as you want. That is new. That's man-made. But we're going to go take a look at that too. As in, somebody might be doing some outdoorsy thing down here. Every now and then a hunter will make some kind of a weird thing, but what they're doing here is lost on me without a closer look. But first, the rant. So, in the last week or so, the group has had a repeating offender for a spammer. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't remember it, but basically this guy's line of nonsense is that he is some kind of a snow tracking expert for Bigfoot, and the first flaw in the guy's logic is going to be look around you and see all the color white that you don't see. There's no snow, so this has not exactly been the winter. Or more, I'm going to steal a quote from classical sources, and in this guy's case, given the line of shtick that he's using, and I think shtick is going to be the word of the day. This has been the winter of your discontent because it hasn't snowed that much. But he's offering a $1,000 reward for tracks in snow, something, and that's all well and good. But then when I run into people like this, I try to vet them before I react to them. And in this case, I went to his own profile on Facebook, and sure enough, he is a person who's advocating, at the very least, the 411 grift of Paulides. And don't kid yourself, it is a grift, and it is a sleazy one. Why is it a sleazy one? Because this is an individual who is preying upon the hopes and dreams of people that have missing people out there and are wanting to find some closure at this point. I mean, there's a point in time where somebody goes missing in a national park or similar, and you don't even find a body, or the odds of you getting closure is probably going to just continually shrink as time goes on. Barring a discovery like 5-10 years later, which doesn't happen on occasion, where you can match up dental records or something, and hey, this person is this person, and sometimes it's something weird where how the fuck did they get over here to, the person probably fell off the ledge up there and ended up down here, and because it was snow season covered the body for a long time, nobody found it. But this guy is basically trying to graft on an illusion of the paranormal being involved, and that is just like misleading people that already have enough on their minds. It's a scumbag move, it's a dick move, and fuck you, David Paulides, for doing this. You're a grifter. And for anyone who is pointing out that he's an ex-cop, maybe there is a reason why he's an ex-cop. I forget the exact specifics, but Richter Riolo, before he gave up off the Richter, had done some background looking into this guy's background, and aside from some allegations of excessive force and some other things, this guy was not a Boy Scout when he had a badge. Not all cops are Boy Scouts, and for the bootlicking scumbags that think that they are, you're dumb. As the saying has come to become known to me, back the blue until it happens to you. And unfortunately, as a law-abiding citizen of the United States of America, I do have a couple of stories of run-ins with the police. No arrests, no criminal record, and yet I got assaulted on 3 different occasions by people that were having a bad day or just mother effing scumbags. And rant on that. Therefore, universal trust in law enforcement is naive. And I'm being kind. Moving on. To the gentleman who subscribes to the 411 bullshit, and that is what it is. God forbid. I also saw one even more painful than that about a week and a half ago. I want to say this was a link shared for the sake of mockery within the coalition, because that is what they do. That is a lot of their line of content. But it was a person doing a documentary that's going out on Amazon Prime. So this is a person doing this nonprofit based on the books and the works of Matthew Johnson, which is Dr. Zorth. You have a guy selling a documentary to earn money in pursuit of the bullshit that is Zorth, which is the most painfully brain-dead, sociopathic manipulation of people. And if Bigfoot has a dangerous cult and a Jim Jones, it is Matthew Johnson. And the Zorth nonsense. Zorth is bullshit. If you believe in Zorth, you need to seek mental help yesterday. This is one where I will not give any sugarcoating. If you are a Zorth enthusiast on any kind of a level that is not just parody, drop what you're doing right now, run, do not walk to the nearest psych ward, and get yourself some meds and some help because you need it. Which brings me to the crux of my rant. There are a bazillion woo-oriented groups on Facebook and like media for you idiots to spew your bullshit. And whether you like it or not, there are people like myself that apply critical thinking, and your bullshit is not welcome within our realm. Stay home. Keep your shit to yourself, because there's not a single pareidolia, peddling picture, or other nonsense out there that's going to convince people that you're not full of shit if they have a standing in society that could be called of sound mind. They're saying you're not, or you're grifting. And if you're a grifter, you're an even bigger scumbag. The word isn't even hoaxer anymore, it's grifter, because all these people hoaxing in this day and age they usually, if you look far enough, as the saying goes, follow the money and you can find where the grift lies. If you're grifting, fuck you. Scott Carpenter, David Paulides, Steve Isdall, Melba Ketchum, all these people, you're grifting. Chris Noel, I don't know if you're grifting, but you are a kook of ever-expanding nonsense. You're under scrutiny, too. If you're found to be a grifter, you can expect to have my love throughout the summer. Just not in the way you want. So the rant summed up is, the First Amendment allows you guys to spew your disinformation and your bullshit. The jury's out on the legality or lack thereof of your grifting, if that's what you're doing. But here's the thing. Take your documentaries pushing Zorth and shove them up your ass. You're selling nonsense, and more than likely you're either not of right mind or you know you're selling nonsense and you need a good swift kick in the teeth. And yes, I'm advocating violence against the bullshit that you're pushing. Because again, Rick Riolo at one point proved that Dr. Zorth is pushing false hope for cancer victims and the like. And this is an idiot who is dangerous and who has devolved into a bigger troglodyte over time. And fuck any goddamn sense of claiming of defamation of any kind. Facing me or anyone else in court in front of a judge would be the last thing this idiot wants. His own rhetoric would be what it does him in, and probably get him into a court-mandated freaking stay in a psych ward, which would be long overdue. He should not have he's a therapist, which is even more scary. He should have his license pulled. Other people, I think, have actually tried to pull it, and they were right to do so. I defend them, and I endorse their efforts. But these people, First Amendment being what it is, there's no social mechanism for keeping you from doing what you're doing. However, as a proprietor of my own groups, my own pages and things in social media, stay the fuck off my lawn. There's a million groups out there pushing your bullshit. You can do it there. You're not welcome in my own. In the past, I have tried to be respectfully polite towards people pushing that BS. No more. My groups are part of perhaps a growing minority within the Bigfoot community, but there's always going to be that group of flesh and blood oriented, scientifically minded, freaking critically thinking people that apply that methodology to actual field research like I'm doing eventually when I stop ranting here. But we're not going anywhere. And we don't owe you a portion of our venue for your bullshit. Stay the fuck home and sell it somewhere else. Because if you haven't noticed, there's a few of us that are getting more and more vocal about the BS you're pushing. We're not going anywhere. And there's nothing you can do to stop us. The more we push, the more you're going to be shown for the idiots you are, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that being said, this is going to lead into a segment break so I can do a hard stop on the rant because it is a repeat, but it bears repeating because you jackasses don't learn. Summed up again, take your woo, shove it up your ass, and stay off my lawn. Keep your stink to yourself. Just a quick follow-up and a wrap-up to the rant. For those people that might ask, do you engage these people when they approach your groups? The answer is a hard no. And the answer for that, the reason why it's no, is they're hoping that you will, because then they get a chance to debate. They're hoping for a chance to validate their lines of BS by doing that. The only thing I've come to really do at this point in time with these idiots is either A, ignore them, or B, you're not welcome here, peddle your nonsense somewhere else and call it for what it is, which is bullshit. And it's not bullshit that I'm eager in any way to debate, because frankly, it's a waste of my time. They have no proof of their claims. I've had the same thing said for years and years, which is, I'll happily rethink the woo if you can provide me with some element of evidence that some of this might be scientifically valid, and I'm still waiting. I myself have mentioned infrasound before. However, I have produced measurable, data-related driven results of listening in on unknown sources of infrasound, and I'm not pointing it towards Bigfoot. I don't know what the source was to this day, but it's there, and it was not normal background noise in this greater environment from that direction right there. Specifically, it happened on 2 specific finite occasions, but it produced measurable results. I don't consider that anymore to be a matter of the woo, because there's actual evidence, and that is what you do if you want me to consider any of this. Go home, get data, come back when you have it. Otherwise, stay off my lawn. That will end our rant for the second time, and we're going to move into updates. Updates being the following. I had mentioned that as we move into the warmer months, we will endeavor to spend more time doing what's the right word for this? Camping out and trying to do more intensive research that way, not just day-to-day forensic evidence gathering kind of research. I do both, and a lot of the inspiration for taking the forestry course and things like that were based on this. Because now you look, and I have to say, knowing a lot of the forestry-oriented things, you look at the forest now and you do see it through a different set of eyes. You see certain things and you wonder why they were before, now you know why things are a certain way, and you know the larger net effect on the forest environment on things like that too. Some good, some bad, some inevitable, because we are, but like it or not, yeah, there are differences in the weather in this part of the country in the last few years versus, say, 10, 15 years ago. The winters on average are milder, and we are coming into a more temperate year-round reality, which changes the snow and winter and how that affects the greater ecosystem throughout the year. In the last couple of years, this time of year, flooding has become a little bit more frequent, which is a pain in the ass, but it's there, and things will need to adapt to it. So, you know, you may have more of one animal, and less. You might have more beavers and less of something else that's less aquatically oriented. More ducks, more beavers, less of something else. However, getting into the field-related research, I had mentioned making a cyber deck, which is for lack of a better word, it is a homegrown, self-created laptop out of basic parts, a lot of things that come from Raspberry Pi and related small system boards. And requires a certain amount of electronic knowledge, something I'm learning as I go. And I have a outdoors-oriented cyber deck, 99% completed. I have the software I want on there for measuring, analyzing, and taking looks at infrasound. That was the major thing. I also have a small but growing network of LoRaWAN-related radio transceivers that can be used for either heart-beating audio recorders that are out in the field, or you could conceivably do this with trail cams too. So things like this are coming into shape. I have 3 so far. They're fairly cheap. I may get 2 or 3 more so I can have like so the way that LoRaWAN works on a basic radio transmission basis. So what makes this something desirable for field research? You can have a conversation between two nodes on a mesh net, a mesh network, which is like a peer-to-peer network for people that know the term. And the given range in an urban environment for a LoRaWAN transceiver from one node to another is typically about 2.5 kilometers. Out in an area like this, it probably expands out to like 10 to 15 kilometers. So you can have a grid of trail cams, audio recorders, or conceivably even a mix of the two. And you can have a base station back at your camp, and you can actually do a heartbeat. And as I expand my knowledge of electronics, there are little system, what they call daughter boards, bonnets, things like this you can put on the unit you have that can graft on the ability to add like a motion sensor. So you get a audio notification back at base camp if you have a motion sensor triggered on an audio recorder or a trail cam. Something comes within a certain line of it. You get a real-time alert on things like this. But if you can spread out a mesh of these things over the course of, say, 2 to 3 kilometers and monitor a fairly sizable range of forest in an overnight situation or over a couple of days, this expands your nighttime, your nocturnal surveillance capabilities quite a bit too. I also have a tone generator that I have some plans for I need to get an antenna and do some testing in the field with, effectively the precursor to what I hope will be some infrasonic call blasting to see if that generates any kind of a response. So these things are moving forward. I have, again, a small but growing LoRaWAN mesh network that I can attach. I have as many audio recorders. Right now, I can deploy an audio recording mesh net of 3 or 4 audio recorders. What I need to do is up their, for lack of a better word, their battery life so that they stay on longer, because they typically, if you just go on the batteries they have, they're not going to last more than an evening unless you have a very high-end one or something. You need to jerry-rig it with some kind of a solar setup or a larger power brick or something. And there are smaller power bricks and batteries like that that are cheap enough. You can keep them going for a longer period of time if you have the right connectors. The opposite end of that being how many connectors makes them how bulky and how obvious, because audio recorders are fairly stealthy if you can do it right. That's the other challenge from the other end of the perspective. Same thing with trail cams. If they're too obvious, animals are not oblivious to trail cams. I've had too many instances where you have a deer walk right up to the goddamn thing when you thought it was concealed and they're smelling the lens. And I had one case where the thing actually almost deliberately blew cold breath over it and fogged up the lens on purpose. I mean, maybe that's just my conjecture, but it seemed like it at the time. And but the point is, obviously they saw that. I have had other ones where coyotes are pacing around it. They're looking right at it. They know it's there. They either can see into that spectrum or they smell it or something. They sense it somehow. So if you have an animal that is, or you have a creature that is on the same mental par as something like a Sasquatch, and it has sensory perception that can echolocate or something like that. And bats can do it, so it ain't that far-fetched. Calm down. They're picking up on it too somehow. They're avoiding them. Otherwise, you'd have more trail cam candidates and not the photoshopped bullshit, the pareidolia crap that we currently have as a standard, or, God forbid, as things come to light. What we need, another growing need of things, as they do a comment on the state of the community, we need to have a sense of technology that's better at detecting AI-generated shit, because that's already a problem in considering evidence, but it's going to get worse as generative AI technology gets better. The difficulty in right now there are certain telltale things I've touched on in the past where you can tell the difference. I mean, you have the ability with generative AI, things like Midjourney and Night Cafe and things like this, where you can generate a nearly photo perfect portrait of a human face until you look at the hands or something like that, because the hands are like this gobbledygook of human deformity because the AI can't get those right yet. There are not some, in some cases subtle, in some cases not so subtle, little cues you can pick up on to tell that it's an AI generated piece of crap. But as it gets better, and it is getting better, fortunately so far, AI generated video is limited to actual real human actors. A conglomerate of it's basically a parlor trick, based on what I've seen anyway, of actors and voiceover related technology. So you type what you want the actor to say, and then the voiceover generated technology will take over from there, and they're saying whatever you want them to say, but they will do certain things you can't say because they're protecting the actor's reputation, something. I remember having a disclaimer in one of them when I was playing with that, just to see what it could and couldn't do. You can't really discredit it if you don't know what it's capable of doing, because maybe there's one out there that somebody's kind of hoarding to themselves for doing deep fake shit that's actually better. Because some of that stuff is scary. But you need the technology to do it. And I'm still willing to bet that the amount of funds required to pay for things like that are probably outside the price range of your typical person pranking on people for Bigfoot-related nonsense. Moving back into community-related gossip or things like this, I don't really... you have a new conference every week, so I don't even really touch on that anymore, because conferences are a dime a dozen these days. I've never been into that scene anyway, but they're a dime a dozen. What you do have is the return of a certain former blogger. He's back. He does Sasquatch Watch Radio, which is now on YouTube, and it's all visual, but okay. And he's done one new show, and the show that he did came across as a critique. If I make him angry, I have him blocked on YouTube, on Facebook, so he shouldn't see this, but if he does, if you want a critique of your content on the new show, less reminiscing of the old days and more new content, like what are you out in the field doing now? Get off your ass and get back to work, or maybe it's time to hang up your hat for good and stay away, because newer people are still doing stuff. If you're just going to reminisce and hang up your hat, then just do it and move on to something else. Because I'm hard-pressed to think of a major conference that Dr. Meldrum doesn't go to. Does he present new material, or is he just going through the same motions of the same presentation? Don't know, because I haven't been there. But it's a legitimate question, and in fact, if he's just going through the same old shit, then nothing's new. And it leads to the same advice. Get off your ass and go out into the woods and go look and generate some new fucking information. Or shut the fuck up until you do. I'm sorry. I like other people would like to see some new action go on. And for anyone who's asking, what are you doing? Well, I'm about to go and have a look around when I'm done doing the video, because I do that too. I do multitask as a rule, but I'm out here. Today is today. It is Good Friday, 2024, and I am out in the field looking as we speak. If only to take a note of the overall conglomeration of a freaking area where I have had infrasound weirdness before as a follow-up investigation. You have all these downed trees and things from the wind. Although that's currently taking a pleasant break so I can rant in peace without having the competition of the background noise of the wind. That pond over there also, as it gets a little bit warmer, is a nice fishing spot too. So there's that. Yet another. So to forewarn, as it does get to be warmer, I do multitask, which means I probably at some point will bring fishing gear along and drop a line and then go and do some near range bigfooting around the area and then come back and check the line to see if anything's biting and do things of that nature, because multitasking is one of these things that I just do as it's a bit of my... That guy hasn't taken that down yet. And I guess that's just the camo pattern on there. I was going to say it's looking like it's getting chewed up by the elements, but maybe not. If he's keeping it up now, we're kind of coming into the spring season for turkey and for deer, though. So he might have just kind of decided to keep it up. Make sure there's no one in there hiding on me. Kind of come over and see which... No, it looks like it caved in a little bit. Is there a hole in that, or did it just have something land on it? That's water. He got his little chair in there, but we're not going to bother him because, again, that's not yours. I can check to make sure there's nobody there listening to me rant, but beyond that, it's not my property, so you leave it alone. Which is the same etiquette anyone out here should show to anyone else's shit, because there are a number of blinds and like things out here. I do know of a couple of hunter spots out here. I don't have this exclusively to myself. There are a fair amount of hunters out here, and as we come up on April, we begin at least turkey season for Connecticut. And pretty sure you have year-round for like coyotes if you're a person that feels a need to shoot coyotes. Kind of a dick move in my mind, but whatever. You have, excuse the burp, you have other small game hunters out there. A guy I work with was out rabbit hunting the other week. I have my license is renewed, but I haven't made definite plans to go up and hunt down here or up in Vermont. Probably more likely up there with turkey season in the... But for them, it's in May. Unless that has changed, so that's coming up. I'm kind of rambling at this point. I'm going to take a segment break so I can actually do some work out here and have a look about and such. We'll be back in a bit, if only to wrap up, unless I think of something else to talk about. I don't want to rant on the rant fodder anymore. So we'll be back in a minute. So we're back. This is probably going to be the last segment for today. It wouldn't be a proper trip out without the quintessential, at this point, aging moose pile of poo. So there's that. We'll give you a nice little, if you can see the beaver lodge out there in the distance. There's one there, and there's one over that way, but you can't see it through the trees, but it's there. It's been there for a while. Again, this is in a couple of weeks, this will become a decent fishing spot. Another, I guess we'll call this a reiteration. There is, in my opinion, a growing need. It's been there, but I think it's growing. A need to apply a deeper dive into mental health as it relates to Bigfoot research as well. Because there are people in the field, if you want to call it a field, that probably, if they're not on meds, could stand to be on meds. And I'm not saying this to stigmatize people, because I'm not. I've said before, I've been to therapy. My better half has been to therapy. There is no shame in gaining therapy. And the reason why is when you have things going on that negatively affect your mental health and you notice them, going to therapy is helping to identify the source of these issues and working them out before they deteriorate to a point where you're actually needing to spend some time in an inpatient facility, as in spend some time, perhaps not of your own accord, at a psych ward. In the same token of knowing when to stop drinking in a given night versus you're walking or driving home and you get pulled over and the cops are kind of legally required to take you down to the drunk tank and have you sit in a hospital bed till you're able to get up and coherently operate your in life again. And sometimes that's a day, couple hours. Sometimes it's worse and they put you in a program by a court order or something. But the way to avoid that is to get therapy first if you find the need to be there. If you're a mentally well-adjusted person living a good life, though, all the power to you. Some of us are more blessed than others, is what it is. It's how you react to it and handle it, though. It's a man. So the other Beaver Lodge is over. You probably can't see it, but it's over there, opposed to the one that's over there. Applying this to Bigfoot research, though, the obvious poster child rearing his head is Matthew Johnson, who, frighteningly enough, is a therapist, last I knew. He's dangerously insane. He should be in a mental institution on a long-term basis, in my less than professional opinion, as I am not a mental health expert. This is my expression of my First Amendment derived right to an opinion. It is all it is. It is not medical advice. It is merely my discretion, with my disclaimer, my saying the guy's not right in the head and he shouldn't be a therapist. He should be in therapy, court mandated therapy. There are other people out there as well. Grifters need not apply because grifters are basically petty criminals that haven't crossed over the line and gotten arrested yet. Give it time. Wrong grift, wrong time, enough scrutiny placed on it, you'll get the attention that you deserve. That's a different thing. But then, I mean, there are probably skeptics out there that would probably apply this to any and all people that just have a passing interest in Bigfoot as a result. However, the study itself of the phenomenon has several aspects. I'm going into my documentary mode right now. There is the flesh and blood field research aspect of it, which I find the most enjoyable because it gets you out into the woods. I'm a four season researcher. I'm out here in snow. I'm out here in the tick infested summer and the lovely fall and the lovely spring as things get over themselves and become nice again despite the wind, which is actually making the day a little bit more chilly than I would have thought. It's not that cold minus the wind, but it is a little chilly. But I digress. The psychological aspect of the phenomenon is there too, though. You have these weird belief systems. Like Zorth went from being a guy who thought he saw something, had a traumatic head injury, and then devolved over time into a person who pushes this grift of the Zorth. At first it was a grift, but it's grown into like a full-on cult in its way, shape, or form. He's the poster child for somebody who should be locked up, in my opinion. If you believe in him and you honestly live your life according to the ways of Zorth, you should be seeking mental help too. If that offends you, too bad. Do it. Then you have the more delusional but probably more harmless people like Chris Noel, who may be a grifter too because he's gone from marching on Washington to make them accept and protect Bigfoot to anti-gravity in the afterlife, and his interesting. There's a whole genre of people that have fucked up UFOs for me the same way. But don't ignore the other aspects of the phenomenon too. I guess that's where I'm going to end this one and go from there, segueing into subscribe, leave comments, respect the demand I've made, though. If you are a proponent of the woo, keep it to yourself going forward because I'm done entertaining any kind. I've in the past tried to run a group or two on Facebook where you have civil discourse between the woo people trying to explain why they believe what they do and the people that are going to ask. The problem with the woo people is they don't do well when they're questioned in their beliefs. They expect you to respect their opinion, and no. If you're pushing BSers after a point wear out their welcome. So no, we don't have to. And I've kind of crossed over into that realm too. I mean, like I said, there's a bunch of us that don't buy into that nonsense, and we're not going anywhere. You don't own the subject. And at least in the Facebook ecosystem, I've noticed that the population pushing this stuff, and the grifters are basically going to grift. And while I don't let them do it within my own communities, they're a harder thing to contain. But the woo have become almost like an infestation. They try to wander into anyone's group thinking they're welcome, and it's like, no, you're not. You've become a bit of a blight on the subject, and I'm kind of bored with it. So keep it off my lawn. That's my going rant towards you and yours. You have your own territory, stay there. And again, like, subscribe. We're going to wrap this one up about here. It's a quiet day in the woods. Windy as all hell, but we'll be returning north in the near future. Notably, probably on the weekend of the 6th, I'll be up there, and we'll start having an initial assessment of that area. Well, returning here on occasion as well. We don't ignore this area in the warmer months either, but we kind of expand our efforts to a more regional focus, and we'll be doing that. So until next time, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoy what I do. If you want me to do something different or make suggestions, you're more than welcome to do that too, and I will take them on advisement, and if they're interesting enough, I'll respond to them as well. So have a great day, and have a happy Good Friday, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, and bye.